Hi there, Nigel Saunders here of KW Bonsai. Today we're going to be repotting my Juniper Bonsai. This juniper is styled to look like General Sherman, the giant redwood tree in California. When I first got this tree about 2.5 years ago, I did repot it into this smaller pot. It was in a giant nursery pot. And I did some root pruning, but not a whole lot. So it's definitely due for a repot. I'll start by removing the tree from the pot. There we go. And then I'll start combing out the roots, starting from the center and going out. It'll be very important on this tree to get a nice root base, to give it a miniature look and to get that nice trunk flare that the General Sherman tree has. Getting a good root base in this tree is definitely going to be a challenge, but you know, the tree's young. I've only had it for 2.5 years. I've turned the tree over now, and I'm working on the bottom roots, just combing them out, trying to remove all the soil. That way we can see what's happening with the roots and then go and prune them. So I'll just place the tree in a basin of water, swish it around, and I'll use my root rake to kind of get the soil out of some of the areas where it's just packed in there with roots, and just give it a good clean. So here's my root base. You can see that the tree was planted up to about here in the soil, but the actual root base, or the plane of the roots, is down quite deep in the soil. So all these top roots are going to have to be pruned away. And the only reason I didn't prune them away last time I repotted it was, one, I didn't want the tree to die. I wanted to keep enough roots because I did some fairly major cuts on these thick roots down below. So this is going to kind of be the second stage of repotting, where I can remove a lot of these top roots because I've got all these fine roots that have developed down below. At the back here, I do have a major root coming out from up high in the tree. That'll have to be removed to get my root plane down lower. So let's start with that one. I'm just going to roughly prune it off at first. Tough root. There we go. So it had a fair amount of fine feeder roots. Hopefully the tree will do all right without it. I've got some surface roots out here on this side that will need removing. I'm just trying to make my cut as flush as possible for now. So I can see my trunk line coming down into the soil down here now. So I'm going to continue removing these upper roots. That one can be combed out. So a lot of these are going to have to be removed also. They're just too high in the root plane. There's some on this side that are high too, that will have to be removed. And I think I'm going to rewash this area and then start carving this root out. I've got the area around that major root that I removed cleaned up, all the old soil taken out. So now I'm going to try and clean up that root and get it flush. So I'll try cutting here. That's not too bad. I'm going to continue removing some of these upper roots, some of these fine ones that have developed. I've got a really nasty crossing root here. It comes out of this root and grows up and across all these other surface roots. So I'm going to have to try and pry that out or end up cutting it off. Yeah, it's coming. So it's this root right here. This root goes underneath these roots and comes out the other side. So I'm going to pull it out. And I don't know if I can redirect it or if it has to be pruned off, but that was a nasty nasty bit of rootage there. I can prune off some of these longer fine roots just to make them a little more compact. There's some hanging down here I can remove. Then I'm going to go underneath the root ball now. See if there's any major roots pointing down I can remove. Maybe this one here. Maybe a little more there. In an effort to get a flat root base on the bottom. All my roots are pretty well in a plane except for these ones. So I'm going to remove those two. There we go. I think that's about it. I think the next step is to plant the tree. I'm going to plant the tree in this training box I made. It's got lots of holes in the bottom for good drainage and a screen, so it's all ready for planting. I'm going to put some soil in the pot. So I'm going to place the tree on top of the soil and I'll check the height of it. That's too high, so we got to settle it in some more. That's not too bad a height there. So now I want to comb out all my roots, make sure they're as well positioned as possible in a nice radial pattern, tucking any of these loose roots under some others to get them going in a better direction, like that, and just combing out all my fine roots like that. I'll start adding my soil. As I work the soil into the roots, I'm holding the tree vertically, so as I work the soil in, the tree maintains its position so I don't plant it on an angle. You can see at the base of the tree I do have some inverse taper. It was flaring out to those large roots that I cut off, and below that point it's a little skinnier. So as these new roots at the bottom of my root plane start to thicken and grow, eventually it'll flare back into the trunk and it'll get rid of my inverse taper. I'm ready to add some more soil now. This pot will give the roots lots of room to grow. The tree's all potted up now, so it's time to give it a good watering. I'll water it 2 or 3 times today, just to make sure all the bark particles and all the soil particles have soaked up the water. And I'll mist the top of the tree during its recovery phase. Repotting this juniper was a big step forward today in getting this tree to look like General Sherman someday. Getting those roots on one flat plane, getting them in a nice radial pattern and sorted out, it's really going to help the tree develop in the future. So now it's time for today's update. Today's update is my asparagus fern. It's grown rather long and wild. You can see how long some of the shoots have gotten on it. Yeah, so it needs a pruning and a cleanup. I'm going to scissor prune some of the longer growth, and I'm going to take it back so it still has some leaves on it, but just shorter. Here's a new shoot that's coming now, and you can see it hasn't developed any leaves yet. And I found if you pinch them, it helps a little bit in shortening the growth of them, but not much. And if you pinch them, just take the very end off. If you pinch them back too far, the shoot just dies off. So pinching doesn't really work well on these. So I just wait till they grow long and then I just cut them back. I've got some weeds I can pull out in the corners here. And I got some weeds back here. The foliage lasts about a year on these. and then it dies off. So I'll prune off some of the dead foliage. Maybe I can just pick it out. It just turns brown and goes dry. So you can just cut it out or pick it out. I'm going to give the tree a hedge type pruning just to clean up all that foliage and get it back under control. For this operation, I'll use my big long scissors. I'll just come in and do a profile prune to the foliage. It's a little heavy out front here, so I'm going to prune it back. This bonsai is still indoors, so the growth isn't as compact as it is when it's outside. I'm just pruning off some of the lower branches that are down too low so we can see the trunk line better. I'm going to give the tree a good watering while I have it outside. I can give it a nice soaking. These asparagus ferns, they can tolerate a lot of dryness. They're native to South Africa, so they're used to dry periods. I'll leave my asparagus fern in the greenhouse for the rest of today, but I'll have to bring it in at night time. There's still a chance of frost here in this area for at least another month. So all my tropical trees are still indoors. It's time now for today's viewers' picks. Today's picture is sent in by Tim of Melbourne, Australia. And his picture is of a Chinese elm, and he's training it in the naturalistic style, so a style you would see in nature. And his tree reminded me of an elm tree that is nearby my house, and it's very similar in structure. Here's a shot of the elm tree when it was just coming out in leaf last spring. Here's a close-up of the trunk. You can see the nice rough bark on it. There's a lot of suckers at the base here, but it goes up and then it divides into a twin trunk and then further divides as it goes up in the tree. And the form of this tree, it reminds me of a weeping willow because there's a lot of hanging foliage in the summer. And it's really a beautiful tree. So here's a picture of that tree and then a picture of Tim's tree again. That's all for today. So Nigel Saunders of KW Bonsai, thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next video.